Why the U.S. will need inflation. We often hear that the U.S. government, with its $18 trillion in debt, can't afford to let rates move up because then it will be unable to afford the interest on our bonds outstanding. That would be true only if everything else stood still, which it never does. We do have a lot of debt, most of which the government racked up in 2008. In September of that year, the U.S. debt stood at $10.1 trillion. By September 2014, that number had grown to $17.8 trillion. The annual interest rate we pay on our debt actually fell over that time from $450 billion to $430 billion, as the overall interest rate on our debt fell from 4.5% to 2.4%. If our interest rate moved up 1% to 3.4%, the interest expense would increase by $178 billion to $608 billion. But if that happened, other things would happen as well. Assuming interest costs moved up with inflation, the tax revenue the U.S. government receives would also increase. The IRS expects to collect $3.3 trillion in taxes this fiscal year. A 1% increase would push this up by $330 billion. The government would have other costs that rose with inflation, but you get the point. If the government can keep GDP and inflation rising faster than the U.S. deficit, then it would be able to use inflated dollars that have fallen in value to pay off previously incurred debt. The same approach works for consumers or anyone else carrying fixed interest rate debt. While Americans have worked hard to pay down their debts during the winter season, they haven't made a lot of headway. Mortgages have declined since the end of 2008. Falling to $8.1 trillion, while credit card balances dropped $186 billion down to $680 billion. But at the same time, auto loans increased by $143 billion up to $934 billion, and student loans shot up $487 billion to $1.13 trillion, a move of more than 75%. All of these debts, except for those at variable interest rates, would be cheaper to pay off with inflated dollars. We are still in the winter season at the moment, and deflation is still the rule for the next 5 years. But 5 years is not that long, so it's time to start considering what's up next for your investments.